Amazon and Meta snapping big tech's earnings losing streak here. The companies both reporting huge profits and strong outlooks, sending their stocks soaring in pre-market trading. Joining us now, we've got Brad Erickson, RBC Capital Markets Internet Analyst. Brad, great to speak with you here this morning. You know, as you think about ultimately what this quarter has meant, and perhaps we take a fine second here and look at Meta first. Let's start things off there, because that is one area that if investors were looking at this company after a year of efficiency, it seems like they're now turning the dial in the opposite direction here.
Yeah, absolutely. And nice to see you both. Thanks for having me. So last night was a quarter. The way we framed it was we may look back in a few years and remember this print as kind of a transformational moment. You're right. The ad business is firing on all cylinders. It looks like actually overall kind of digital ad demand is probably doing better than expected in Q1. So not necessarily just a Meta thing. I think the bigger thing, though, that came out last night was, you know, Mark Zuckerberg continues to expand on their AI strategy. And not interestingly for us, it wasn't just around kind of how AI will affect the ad business. He's expanding the scope of that. And I think the thing we're kind of talking about in our comments post report this morning is that, you know, it almost feels like they're signaling an entry into the cloud business or some other type of service or capability beyond kind of the core ad business as we know it today.
Right, let's talk about one of the big announcements from this report, and that's the dividend. Talk to us just about the significance of this, and when it comes to investor expectations, shareholder expectations, what this also just tells us about Meta's financial stability at this point.
Yeah, of course. I mean, gosh, what a difference a year or two makes, right? I thought one of the things that investors really probably liked a lot on the conference call was Mark kind of he was very he almost kind of condemned himself for having not appreciated how well the company could run even as you became more efficient. And now you add on the dividend, which is really just, it's kind of an olive branch, right? It's not a very big dividend at this point, but it's definitely a reflection of, hey, this company is growing and profitable for the future. And there's a lot of confidence there. And so there's, you know, obviously multiple angles of capital return now, which is really encouraging.
So from that perspective and from that angle, then, for investors out there that don't own Meta, that hear about this dividend now, does that make it not only more attractive, but does it make it a buy?
Yeah, I mean, we think this thing can go a lot higher. Last year in 2023, it was absolutely our top pick in mega cap, and you know, kind of reiterated we're bullish on it in 24 as evidence. The dividend certainly expands kind of the addressable shareholder base that could go out or would go out and buy Meta. I think from here, though, too, beyond just that, the dividend as the driver, I think, you know, back to my comments on potentially some type of an entry into the cloud market, that represents kind of unprecedented multiple expansion opportunity. We know the earnings growth is going to be super strong for this company, but historically the multiples can have been held back because emergence of things like TikTok highlighted that maybe the competitive moat wasn't like perfect on this business longer term. You start to talk about getting into other huge markets like cloud, that's multiple expansion potential on a whole other level from our perspective.
Brad, the other big name that you cover here is Amazon. A strong report here from the company after the bell yesterday. We're looking at gains ahead of the open, at least in the futures market, up just about 6%. What was your top takeaway from this report? And do you think it helps alleviate some of the fears that have been out there just in terms of where Amazon stands in this AI race with one of their big announcements?
Yeah, totally. I think in Amazon's case, very good report, also stock up, like you said. Very different report, though, from Meta. In some ways, a lot more sort of linear, straightforward. And what I mean by that is investors really want two things out of this company, and we got both of them last night, or the beginnings of them. One, they need to continue to see the operating income results and outlook go higher. They did. That happened. And two, investors looking for better confidence that the cloud business can reaccelerate. And I think we came away from last night, investors came away last night feeling better about those two things. So the thesis, while it's kind of understood, our view going forward is that as investors continue to see kind of Amazon doing the blocking and tackling around those two things I mentioned, the stock can continue to work. And I think we're pretty convicted on that. Amazon was our favorite idea entering the year and certainly remains so.
And so with that in mind, profitability, that's been one through line that we've been continuing to try and track across all of these companies over the earnings season. North America, particularly here, as they were kind of talking through the different regions here, they mentioned operating margins at some of their recent low levels in Q1 of 2022, but now 7 consecutive quarters of improvement, cumulative improvement of 800 basis points they're talking about over those 7 quarters here. So how does that change perhaps the margin profile that investors should expect coming from Amazon going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's ramping margins, earnings, and free cash flow on a scale that people have been wanting out of this company for 20 years since going public, frankly. So that's why it's kind of so important. Just give you a sense of the numbers. They just did $37 billion in operating income in 2023. We have them forecast to do $100 billion of operating income in 2026, right? And when you're doing 6, 7, maybe $800 billion of revenue over the next few years, 100 or 200 or 300 basis points of margin expansion is obviously tens of billions of dollars of that operating income. So yeah, pretty historic kind of expansion in the earnings and free cash flow here.
Brad, always a pleasure getting some of your analysis here, talking both Meta and Amazon for us this morning after both companies reported earnings yesterday evening.
Thanks
Brad
a lot.
Erickson,
Good to see you.
RBC Capital Markets Internet Analyst. Great to see you too.